It is my privilege that we can continue our study about the preparation for the end time. Today, the subtitle is America and Babylon. And what it has to do, and what's the connection between America and Babylon, and what that means, we want to see in this lecture today. But before we enter in, we want to remember that there is a two-way perspective on the end time. It's one time the humans, the world that expects a danger that the world can come to an end and had set that clock 2 minutes before 12. The humans want to save the world because they want to save themselves. But at the same time, they prepare for a war. They prepare with weapons because everyone wants to secure his own life. On the other hand is God and his perspective and his people who want to become free from that self-destruction nature in them and be able to give a message to the world that there is freedom from sin, freedom from self-destruction, freedom from self-deception. So in this battle between these two, we must know where does the conflict start from. And we remember that God is love and he is the law. He is the origin of all natural laws. He is the origin of all elements of all life. And if his creatures that have a mind would think according to these laws, they would just do good. They would never fail in anything. But there was an angel, the first leading angel in heaven, that came up with the idea that the law of God could be changed, that out of a creature he could become a creator. Out of an effect he could become a cause. He wins a third of the angels who, despite knowing the truth, follow their irrational and impossible idea. And they try to impose his opinion on God and the whole universe. These are unrealistic thoughts and actions that contradict the law. That's why they are evil. Now, who fights against whom? And evidently, it's always the evil fights against the good. It was Lucifer who became Satan, the dragon that fighted against God and wanted to impose his opinion upon all. Because the one that doesn't respect the character, the person of the other one, is going to use force. This is not in God, but this is in the one that breaks his law. And so we find that God intervenes and has a few steps of eliminating evil. But he can only eliminate evil through good, because he's good and he cannot do evil. So God tries to convince his angels who have gone wrong in their mind to see their error. But all his efforts fail, and so a third of the angels are getting to the point where reasoning for them is impossible, and at the same time, those who have not fallen into this temptation are very clear that they won't go into an irrational, impossible way to think or to act. And so when those two groups were settled forever, then God intervened with his first step of eliminating, that is, taking the evil away from the government. Because what shall they do there? All the time fighting? No. But he doesn't destroy the evil because he knows that the whole universe will be confused if he just lets Satan and his angels die. So he keeps them alive. He gives them an allocated place in the universe, and he even allows them to tempt the other worlds. Because God is never afraid of temptation or of the truth. So he creates in the midst of this conflict the earth and many other planets in this universe. But he proves that by giving the devil the liberty to tempt according to the possibilities to be tempted of the other worlds, he realizes that it's only one world in this vast universe that falls into that temptation to think like the devil. It's only our world that becomes the place where this battle becomes, or the world becomes the battleground of this battle. And here, because God wants to save humanity, there is a battle. That battle is a battle of 1-to-1. Jesus, or the Son of God, becomes human. And as human, he fights the devil to overcome him with the good. When the devil crucified Jesus and nailed him to the cross, and when Jesus cried out that cry, "It is finished," the whole universe was safe from every seduction of evil. Because they have seen where evil leads. It leads to the destruction of humanity. And if the devil could, he would destroy God so that he might what do to this universe? As well destroy it. Because when evil once has started, it will destroy. Because it's an intruder. It's not everlasting. It's going to make itself borders. And so when the angel came to the point of no return, they came to the border of evil. Evil destroyed them. And now Jesus fights that 1-to-1 fight with Satan, and he wins. Not as a God, he wins as a human. And we have seen how he wins on earth. He overcomes the evil with good. He allowed the devil to do anything with him because he trusted his Father, because evil can only overcome with good. He didn't oppose him. He didn't try to force neither the devil nor Judas nor anyone that came upon him to force him. He allowed it. He accepted the kiss of Judas who betrayed him. Because there is one thing that can be proven. Evil must be overcome with good. If not, evil would change the good, and that would then be terrible. So evil couldn't change God. It could not change even Jesus, who became human that he overcome. And when he died on the cross, the devil was excluded from heaven. He was isolated on the earth because no one would ever believe him again. So the whole heaven now was secure from every evil. So there was a step in the eliminating of evil that God realized by becoming human and destroying, taking away the force of the devil through good. And now we find ourselves in between the second and the third battle. There where we've left our writings in Revelation 12, we know there from in verse 9, "And the great dragon was cast out, the old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night." So it's over there. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe unto the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So his time is running out. And so here on earth, we have the preparation for this last battle, where every human must come to the same place, where everyone must have decided finally to follow God or to follow the devil. And only then, when all the humans have decided, finally, Lucifer and his followers will be finally destroyed after they have lost the absurd and impossible battle they began. So let's look to the battle for man on earth. Here is the earth and mankind, and we see different colors of humans, those who are on Christ's side and those who are on the devil's side, and some who are in between, or some who can still change while they are not having come to the point of no return. So here is God. His goal is to freeing man from his self-deception, that he became a slave of the devil through taking from him, through breaking the law of God, and to save him from self-destruction, save him from death. And of course, here is the devil, Lucifer and his fallen angels, and they want to keep man in his self-deception until complete destruction. And now we have to see the methods by which everyone comes to reach the human being. It's the battle for man on the earth. And let's look to the method. God becomes man and makes in himself the restoration of mankind. He renews him. And so he destroys that self-deceptive nature in himself so that he can unite humans again with God. Because as long as that self-deceptive nature is in us, we cannot trust God. We are always susceptible to the influence and to the deception of the devil. We saw that in our last presentation. And we saw in the other presentations that Jesus had to do a work in himself, and then in the heavenly sanctuary, he does a work outside himself, so that what he realized in his victory, he now gives to us as an inheritance. But does he impose it on us? No. There is only a loving invitation. He comes and says, "Come unto me, all that you're heavy and burdened and laden, I will give you rest." There is no compulsion. When he sent out his disciples, he didn't tell them, when they don't receive you, you just stay there until they receive you. You just persist. No, there is no such thing in the love of God. Yes, he is there and he insists and cries out and says, "Come unto me." But if he is rejected, he won't impose himself. He won't stay there in a protest manner and say, "I will just wait here till you get me." No. He says to his disciples, "You take and you take off the dust of your shoes and you go to the next place." And Jesus gives them the example when he once wanted to go through a location, through a city, and the leaders of that place come out and say, "We don't allow you to come through our city. Please don't get through it." And Jesus respects it, because love respects the will of the other one and the personality of the other one. And so he takes a detour. But the disciple, they say, "Lord, do you want us to ask to fall fire from heaven like Elijah did to destroy them?" No. Jesus says, "You don't know whose spirit you follow. You don't know whose child's spirit you are." Jesus makes them clear. In his method of reaching humanity, there is no compulsion, no force, no violence, no coercion, no force. There is nothing of that in it. If you don't follow, because he invites you. If reason doesn't help you to follow his invitation, then nothing will help you to follow it. So he comes and he invites lovingly. Yes, he works through the means of the consequences. When he allows the effects of sin should come out in our body, he helps us to see that something is wrong, so that we might see what we cannot see otherwise. But in his approach, in his method of reaching humanity, he only comes with an invitation. He made it all for us, and he offers it all for us. But we must come and take it, and it must be from our own will, from our own wanting, from our own conviction. So he must gain our trust. How is Lucifer's method? He entices, seduces, and deceives. And this is his terrible thing, that he, yes, seduces and deceives for the evil, but that is visible. If someone does kill someone, you see that it is wrong. But if someone just opposes the enemy or opposes evil, he doesn't see that's wrong. That's why God gave the disease as a help to see that when we oppose evil or when we want to fix evil with force, we will do the same evil thing like the other one. And this is hard for us to see. I just had yesterday a lady who came to me because she has fever and she takes antibiotics, and on her right side of her neck she has an inflammation, and she says, my whole right side is hurting. And I say, well, what's going on in your life? Something must be there that burdens you. And she then tells me, yes, my daughter, who is psychically, who has a mental issue, she doesn't go to the doctor. She doesn't want to treat herself. And then she says she has a son that I raised for 7 years. Then she took him back, and now the son is 18, but his mom keeps him at home, doesn't send him to school, so the son is not reaching the potential that he could reach. He said he has approximately the attitude and of one that has an age of 12 years. And so she's sad, she's fighting for the good of her daughter and for the good of her nephew, or grandson. But is her fight a good one? Is she using force or not? Yes, she uses. She's seduced by her selfish nature, by the devil, to force on her child and her grandson the good. If she could, she just would bring her daughter to the doctor. And if she could, she would just take that grandson and give him a right education and put him on the right path. But she cannot. And so she forces. And she doesn't understand that that is a deception of her own selfish nature. She wants to do the good, but she is doing the evil. And this is so hard to understand, especially when you're a mother. When you see things happening like that, people come to me and say, I cannot stand seeing the evil. I say, I understand. That's selfish nature. That's deceptive. That's deception. How can God stand it? How can God look to it? How can He look to it? We must, through His grace, through His power, be able to allow evil to exist. The devil provokes to fight. Oh, not necessary for the evil, but he takes the Christians and they fight all the time together. They think a good fight to fight against each other, but everyone who fights must be wrong, must be deceived. The devil puts conditions. He conditions the people. Very good meaning parents don't understand that conditioning is the devil's method. They say if you don't pick up your toys and put them back, you're not allowed to come into the house, or whatever they condition it. And they don't know when they say those words, they just stir up in their child that sinful nature. And the devil is very happy because he has the parents as his helper to destroy the child. We are not understanding the method of the devil. And then, of course, he persecutes those who doesn't think like him. You see, persecution in the Bible is never starting from a Christian, from a person that lives with God. Persecution is always the opposite of it. So let us make that clear. If you have a spirit of persecution, if you have to, let's say, need to help your church. There is the word that I'm searching for. You saw people, church elders and pastors, when they hear some people saying certain things that they think are heresies, they just prohibit that person to speak. Because they say they have to help, they have to not allow their church members to become tempted. But who made you to know better? Who put you to be there and trying to help a reasoning person? You see, I was once on a camp meeting, and the person that spoke before me spoke just the opposite that I present. And when I heard his message, of course, at the first moment I got stirred. I said, how can this be? But then I spoke to God and I said, God, you are very interesting. You know that you endowed humanity with the capacity to discern between good and evil, to discern between the messages which are from you and are not from you. So you don't worry, you don't even need to take some protection walls that someone should not be tempted. Or you are the opposite. You just bring people and let them be tempted because you gave them the ability to judge by themselves what is right and wrong. But here are these people in the church, they want to protect their church members and they think they are able to discern heresies and not, and the others are not. You don't find in the Bible that the heretic persons were taken off the children of Israel. They were more heretic prophets in Israel, you can see that any time, than good prophets, but they were never killed or expelled. Elijah killed not the wrong prophets of Israel, but just the prophets of Isabel, which were heathens. So there is no persecution from the good of the evil. There is not there. And Elijah didn't persecute them. There was just a judgment that took place in God's name, not a persecution. But here there are. Saul was persecuting the children of Christ. But he thought he would do God a favor. Everyone who has the spirit of persecution or even tries to protect others from heresies has something wrong in himself. Because it's a wrong method. Let everyone be exposed to whatever. Because God, if God allows it, I allowed it as well. So let's see that in this end time, the greatest deception will be, one of the greatest deception will be that Christians will persecute those who don't believe like they. There will be a Christian guard that wants to implement, that wants to force everyone to worship the way they think it's right. This persecution comes from religious people. It comes from those who think they're right. But everyone who persecutes is from the devil. By no means, by no excuses. Persecution never came from Christ. There's never one example in the Bible where one child of Christ persecutes other people. So there is force and violence in the method of the devil. He persists. He doesn't allow a human to just do what he wants. And his followers just want to persist and fight with force. There is no such means at no place, nowhere. So let us make clear, God can only reach the heart of men through his method of love. And the devil can only keep man in his self-deception by enticing, by force, by fights, by conditioning, by persecution. Thank God that we can see the two methods, they are opposites. Now the Bible, in the battle for man on earth, gives general images, how this battle is fought. And so we find that there is an image of animal or beasts that are the powers that fight against God's people. We don't find that on God's side. The image of the beast, we find it in Daniel and we find it in Revelation 13, as we will read soon. He always works through deception, so here there are images that show the character and the battle against the humans. They just show the method of the devil's approach to humanity. God has another image. God has an image of the city of Jerusalem. We find it very early in the Bible where God takes Jerusalem as his city. And in Jeremiah 16, you can read that chapter, and it is the painful message of God marrying a city. You see, he takes this city in marriage because that was the custom. When a person became a king, he married the land and he married the city, the capital city. And so God married Jerusalem as an image. Because in the Bible we find that the church is compared with a faithful woman. And of course, the devil also has a city. That's Babel. And that is an unfaithful woman. It's a harlot. And God has a marriage covenant with Jerusalem. Now, let's make clear, because many people are confused. They think God marries them. They think Jesus and God marries them. No. Jesus doesn't marry humans. He doesn't marry people. He marries a city. That's the picture, because this is an image. The marriage is an image for that union between him and the city. And of course, that city will have inhabitants. And the inhabitants are the children of the city, but they are not the one that he marries. That's why Paul says very clear, Jerusalem, that of heaven, is the mother of us all. And Isaiah speaks about the one that has no children will have the most of children, because there were no child born in Jerusalem, and yet she will have more children than any Jerusalem had on earth. So those are images. God marries a city, and he takes that comparison with the faithful woman. We find the faithful woman in the church, in Revelation, and a harlot in Revelation. we find Solomon speaking of a wise woman and of a stupid woman, of a harlot woman, and he compares them wisdom and unwisdom. So here there is no marriage covenant in the devil's system because he is not keeping, however, any covenant. So there are obedient children and there are disobedient, rebellious children. There is eternal life as the result of man following the invitation of God, and there is complete destruction as the one that keeps himself in those self-deception. So those are the images that we find in Revelation, that we find throughout the Bible. There are more than that, but we just take those that are helping us to see the message, because the image is just there to see a message. And God uses images because He knows that words are changing, but images not. So that's why over time, the word, the information of salvation is kept in images so that words should not change their meaning and we should become confused. So God was very wise when He made that in images so that our mind can go and study them and explore them, because they're not just words set. Of course, in our self-deception, we would like words. No, God gives us images that makes us think, because we must think if in order to be saved. We must think in order to discern between good and evil. Thinking, the actions of the spirits are always active, not passive. So these are the images. And now we go to the principles of the battle. And we know the law of God says you have to take in order to give. You have nothing to give from yourself. And you must take from the right source, and then you can give to the right place. Lucifer and his angels and his principles are give to receive. That is, we think when we give something, we give it from ourselves. We don't understand that that is a pure deception. No one can give anything from himself. That's why should you receive anything? Why would you need something back? Only if you're a God. You can say, oh, I gave you the means. What did you do with them? But if you are a creature, then you can never expect or take anyone into judgment, because it's nothing that you ever invested in anyone and anything that comes from you. So those are the two general principles, and you find it in that battle, the law of life and the law of death, the take to give from God, which was set, and then you can never give something from yourself, so you can never expect something from yourself. This is total illusion, total impossibility. This is the only way to live. So let's come to see Lucifer's battle against the people of God in prophecy. Now, we must know, since the battle always comes from the evil one, there is more evil battle against the good described in the Bible than the other way. That's why people, when they read the Bible, are sometimes very confused, because they read all those terrible stories. Because the Bible is a real book, and it wants to explain, yes, that what God does for humanity to save him. But it also explains the unreasonable, violent battle of Lucifer against the people of God. That's why we find in Daniel and in Revelation these pictures where the people fight, Lucifer's people fight against God's people. Now, Lucifer, the dragon, is the old serpent. We read it here in verse 9, And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So he's a spiritual being. So he doesn't come up unto us in that, but he uses his people, which are called, or his institutions, beasts. They are animals. That means they are human rulers, governmental and ecclesiastical. That is, that what is presented in the Bible as beasts or as animals. They are human forces, human rulers that are there, influenced and put from the devil to rule as governmental and ecclesiastical rulers. So it's as well they try to manage the state thing and also the church thing. This is why we find that the Bible describes here in Revelation 13, and we read now from verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth was as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now, from the pictures of the beasts that this beast has, and from the place it comes from, those who know prophecy know that this beast comes out as a result of war, because that's what comes out of the sea. It's war in the Bible. And out of what wars came this beast out? And if we look to Daniel, we find in Daniel the statue in chapter 2. And there in chapter 2, in that statue, the Lord just shows Nebuchadnezzar through the dream that Daniel explains to him that he is the head of gold. Then after him comes Medo-Persia, and then Greece, and then the Roman Empire, and the mixed empires at the feet. But in Daniel chapter 7, there is explained the same thing in beasts. And we don't have the time to read it all, but just to see it from the beginning. Verse 2. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. That's again the war. And we know all these beasts come out of a war. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea, divers one from another. Those are the 4 beasts that we will see. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and the mouth speaking great things. So you see, these are, and when you read further, you find that all this explanation is seeing to this four imperials, 4 empires, the Babylon, the Medo-Persian, the Greece, and the Roman. So God gives a picture in that statue and also a picture in the animals. And now we know that this thing from Revelation 13 comes out of the 4th beast, that little horn. That little horn is the same thing that is the beasts of Revelation 13. That's why it's so important to understand the pictures that are there. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And we will explain why this beast is also Babylon of the New Testament. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things, and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Now there is an important thing to understand, the timing. 40 and 2 months is 3.5 years, the same period that we find in Daniel and also in Revelation. And we find that 1,260 days. And those are the same period, and it's speaking about the same beast that when we see it, that is going and fights against the people of God. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So he got all power over the earth, over kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth. All that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. If any man have an ear, let him hear. So we find this beast that comes up from the Roman Empire, and it comes up in a time, and it's a spiritual power, and an ecclesiastical and a governmental power. It's a combination of both. And it's nothing else than the fallen Christianity. You see, it's the same picture. In the Old Testament, we find Jerusalem falling apart, becoming a harlot. And God tries to save her. And she has to go into the Babylonian prisonership. Jerusalem is destroyed. Then it is rebuilt, because God doesn't give up his people. But even though it is rebuilt, the people fall away again. And when Jesus comes, they crucify him. They don't receive him as the king and the savior of the world. No, they put him on the cross. And so Jerusalem is finally destroyed 70 AD of the Romans. So, here we have now the Christians that start with the disciples, and they go well. But then there comes the temptation, and they fall apart. Constantine, the emperor, the Roman emperor, becomes a Christian, and so he unites heathenism and Christianity, and so Christianity falls apart, and they become Babylon. They become this blasphemous beast, that goes and fights against the people of God for 42 months, or for 1,260 years. And these years end with the deadly wound that this little horn or this beast gets. In 1798, when through the papal power, That beast of Revelation, which is the Vatican, the papacy, the papal power, lost its dominion, and through the French Revolution, then he got his deadly wound. Of course, while the Christians were put into his hands, there was always a remnant, like it was always a remnant in the Old Testament. Yes, in Elijah's time there were 7,000. Well, it's not much, but still there is a remnant, and 7,000 is a number. And so, during all this persecution, the Waldensians, through this dark ages, the 1,260 years that the reign of this beast was there, that got the power from the devil. You see, the fallen Christianity goes into the devil's service, and they persecute the other Christians, they persecute all the other religions, and they want to establish their own empire, their own religious empire on the whole world. And after this period of time, prophecy is very clear, very precise, I want to say. His power comes to an end. But here in verse 3 it says, "And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast." Yes, now this wound is slowly healed. He is not yet back officially to the same power that he had before, but he's almost there. What is missing? That the Pope, that papacy, would get again at the head of the world leaders, or to lead the world, and of course leading it through kings, because that's why this beast is so different. It has all the worldly powers in itself, and it arises from all these four beasts, and has the same, I say so, mindset. Has the same mindset of the devil and serves the devil. But what does it miss until it becomes empowered again? So here it says in Revelation chapter 13 from 11. This is where the next steps come in together. That is, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." So who is this beast that comes from the earth? Now we know, if the sea is the symbol of coming out of war, coming out of the sea of war, then coming out of the earth means it doesn't come out of war. And there is the one power on this earth that did not arise by war, and that's the United States of America. This is the beast of the earth of Revelation 13, 11 to 17. It's America, it's the United States of America. And they started well. That's why they have these descriptions. It had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So America is also seen as a Protestant nation, and this Protestant nation was faithful to God at the beginning, but it slips away, it falls apart, and it becomes, in the Bible describes in Revelation 16, also the false prophets. Because the Protestants that once came into America, they resisted the Vatican, they resisted Babylon, but now they become themselves in the trap of Babylon. And so now they erect for the beasts that power that it needs to become again there where it was once in those 42 months. And he does great wonders. So he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell thereon to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. This must be a world power. And there is none world power that didn't arise from war except America. And America rises there as the world power, and it will, and it is that Christian power that will give to the Vatican, to the papacy, its power back. And it doth great wonders, so that it makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the mean of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image had of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So this beast does not only give power back to the beast, it creates an image of the beast that is the false worship. It's the same picture that Nebuchadnezzar did when he made that image and said, all nations, all that he conquered, they had to come to Babylon, and he made that great feast, and all the great men were called, the leaders, to worship his image. And here were also Daniel, the three friends of Daniel. They were also called, and they were there, and they had to bow down. When the music will go on and the worship would start, they should bow down before this image, because he made it out of gold, totally because he didn't accept that something should come after him. He wanted to remain everlasting. And that the same thing repeats in future. It's not yet there. The things are all there. America, this what we read here, is future. There will be given power back to the papacy, and there will be made an image of the beast and a mark of the beast, which will speak in the next hour, so that all men that do not worship what should be they want us to worship, then they will kill us. And this is the devil's method. The devil forces for the good. There is never a force in God for worship. And we said last time that the greatest deception that the devil will bring upon Christianity will be that they make worship not a taking from God and becoming loving like God, but giving God something and expecting from God to do what they want to do. That's why they want to appease God. They want to bring a sacrifice. They want the whole world should be so nice, and they should worship only this image so that God will stop his judgment on this earth. They want to impose the good. God didn't say you have to eat from the tree. No, he said you have to not eat to live. But here they come and say you have to eat from it. And you have to take that worship, that God that they prescribe to you. And so that's forcing. That's why the religious leaders now in the United States will come together with the governmental power, and they want to have a Christian nation, and they want to impose good things. Yes. Do they have bad intentions? No. But the power that is in them is the devilish power, because there is none such thing in God that ever would force anyone to worship or not. That would be forcing anyone to do the good. No, there is only consequence for the bad thing. There is only consequence when you break the law. But there is nothing that you should do something so that you can eat and drink just because you have to worship that image. So we are approaching this final battle. in which God wants to have a people that are the opposite of this raging nations, of these raging Christians, of these raging religious people who want to impose the good on others. There must be these people that look like Jesus, that allow the evil to exist. They can see the evil. They can handle it. They must not oppose it because they know that it is not done unto them. They are free indeed. And then when those around us, when in this battle everyone has to stand his stand to take the mark or not, those who are still able to think, those who are not totally under the deception of the devil and their selfish nature, will take a stand on the right side. And so I want to be ready for that hour. I want to prepare. I want that my selfish nature should be out of my heart so that I live and work through God's method of love, where there is no persecution, no coercion, no force. It's just an invitation, appealing to reason and leaving the decision to everyone. That is our God. And we are called to represent Him in this last day, in this decisive time of world's history. What do you want to become? A servant of Christ or a servant of the devil? Both will be religious. The one will have the wrong methods, the wrong principle, and the one will have the right one. And they will shine in a marked difference between love and not love, or selfishness and pride. I want to be among those who will shine for God. They are prepared. And I want to encourage you to think what is better. There will be no coercion. You will never be forced. But if you want to serve God, then the way is open. Come, He says, and take from me what I have prepared for you. Amen.